would like to invite Tron to the stage, Podcast Network Asia, and then James Cridland, Pod News. I will have Neil McFadden from Podium Podcast and Intelligence FM, and also Mbak Indah Tanip from Populix. So for the speakers, we have to share mics because we only have limited mics for now. So we have the content people, the content person, education, research, and not to forget we have our very own futurologist, James. And we'd like to hear to discuss challenges. We've been here all day to discuss about what podcast is now, the challenges, the future, how we can product tagging now on video podcast. It's very exciting. So I would like to start with the first question, video. Video and monetization, two big words for today's conversation. I would like to start with Ron first. You admitted that you are a fully audio person, but now moving to video, and how does it look like for you and for the monetization part?
Okay, so this is straight to the jugular. Okay, I'm Ron. I'm the founder and CEO of Podcast Network Asia. We are the biggest podcast company out of the Philippines. So a bit of context, when we created the company in 2019, we started with 5 shows. We peaked at our podcast creation extravaganza in around 2022. We grew from 5 shows to 230 shows in 2.5 years. It's crazy. And we don't have a platform. So what we do is we publish on Spotify, and a lot of that, I'd say 90% of those podcasts were all done in audio. And you can only do that scale because you're doing it in audio. Good luck trying to do that in video. You're not gonna be able to get that done. But I'm a big fan of RSS. James knows this. I'm the only guy that listens to Podland or Pod News weekly review now on Spotify. Everybody, big fan. RSS democratizes podcasting by default, and I drank that Kool-Aid hard for the longest time. But when I drank that Kool-Aid, the problem was when I sold that inventory to advertisers, you're always going to be pigeonholed into a small budget, because I call it the quintuple whammy of a podcast curse here in Southeast Asia that I fell into. So the first curse is that since you're pigeonholed, you're audio only, any marketing budget of a brand, when you ask it in digital marketing budget, 80% of that is already going to be pre-allocated on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, the big market. If there's a 20% experimental budget, you're not the only guy gunning for that budget. Everybody wants a piece of that pie, including you. Second, if you do get lucky in getting that pigeonhole and getting that budget from the pigeonhole, you will be you have a long sales cycle. Even if you close it in January, the deployment will only happen in Q3 and Q4. Third is that if it gets coursed through an agency, most likely they won't pay you on time. And you have podcasters to feed. Fourth is that when they don't pay you on time, you have to front the money because the podcaster says, hey, I already did the ad. Pay me. And then the worst case is that the rev share kicks in. When the money comes in 3 to 4 months in late, you only get 30% or a small piece of that pie. It's hard to run a business and remove that stigma of being pigeonholed through audio that way until the pandemic ended and video started coming out. And we were, again, because do we come out of RSS? We love audio, we're pure audio people, but when we tried it, actually the biggest catalyst happened in 2 forms. We have a podcast post-production product called Pod Machine. So what kept us afloat, in 2022, we were the biggest creator of Spotify exclusive podcasts in this region. 30 here in 30 in the Philippines and 20 in Indonesia. We basically sort of brainwashed the industry to say, hey, if you're going to create a podcast, do it on Spotify. But Spotify is a walled garden, right? They don't, back then it was Anchor. It's going to be hard to do dynamic ad placement and all that. The biggest shift happened when Spotify removed their Spotify exclusive and original program. We almost died in the process through that. But Pod Machine kept us afloat. And the biggest shift that we saw starting last year, before last year, 80 to 90% of the episodes we edit, and we edit around 200 to 300 per week. All of it was all done in audio. Last year, it flipped. Became 70-30, 70% video. And then the requirements of people now was like, hey, I don't want just an audio episode. I need 5 clips off of that, or videograms. It's like, what is going on here? Started in the US. And all of a sudden, the whole thing creeped here into Asia. And then we started selling it. So in terms of monetization, it's a whole new world of monetization in video, because now you have a visual that you can sell as well. What we started selling this year, I'm just gonna TLDR here, is that we sold branded podcasts that are designed to thrive not just in long form, but in short form. The biggest catalyst and the biggest aha moment is when Max Cutler of Parcast, Pave Studios now, said that podcasting is dead as we know it. That in video, those lines are blurred. You don't know what a podcast is, whether it's RSS and whatnot. It's a show. And a show should thrive not just in long form, but in short form. So we sold that. We created a video podcast to one of the sports betting sites, and bam, overnight, this is where the biggest aha moment. We launched a sports podcast, or several sports podcasts for them. In Spotify, it became number 16 on Spotify. Averages around 5,000 listens per episode, downloads per episode. Woohoo! We were celebrating. But that same podcast, when we published it on YouTube and in TikTok, YouTube, it generated 200,000 views in the same week. In TikTok, for every single episode, we generated 7 clips. That generated at least 600,000 views on clips off of the same episode. So now when I sell podcasts, it's no longer, hey, this is going to be on Spotify. This is going to be omni-channel, omnipresent with your branding on it. And that's where we were able to unlock budgets of what? 30, 40, 50K US per show. Because now you're utilizing everything. That's what video unlocked for us.
Okay, so Neil, maybe you can add more about, Ron mentioned about the flip to video, and Spotify is like also engaging to podcasters to use video. Maybe you can talk more about that.
Yeah, we're really feeling the push for a couple of the shows that we work with to go to video. We're especially with Spotify, and we're seeing the algorithm erode our audience for audio only, and we're being forced, basically, is sort of how we're feeling to go to video. So the tough thing is not all shows are meant to be video. So it's a real challenge then to turn that into video. So we're starting to think about how do we do this and thinking about it in different ways. So it's not just talking heads. So an example, one of the shows that we work with is called Normal Curves. It's 2 professors that are statisticians, and one of them records in her closet. And so she's like, I don't want to do video. So we just did an episode with them where there was a recent MIT study that was talking about AI rots your brains. Well, they tore it apart. It was like bad science. So what they did for the video, what we did for that video was we actually, it was still one of them, and it was still Regina, one of the hosts in her closet, but we just took the audio and we created a whole video version using when they were talking about a curve or something statistic, which show it on the screen. When they were talking about pieces of the research, that's what we were showing in the video. So just thinking about it differently from the talking heads. And I'll echo what Ron's saying is the other part is thinking about it's not just the long form. And that's a big flip for us as we've gone from creating long form, whether it be video or audio, and then the add-on is the shorts and the clips and whatnot, to think about it's the whole thing and how that all works together. And some people are going to consume the show by watching 4 shorts of it, And some people are going to consume the show watching the 45-minute episode. On the monetization front, it definitely complicates it. So it goes from a show where for an audio show where we're doing host-read ads, and you got a pre-roll, a mid-roll, and a post-roll, and we're selling those. And now we got to think about what's baked in. And so now we're selling two different things. We're selling dynamically inserted host-read ads, and then baked in, and we're selling them I guess similar to what you're saying, Ron. So it definitely is changing the game. And on one hand, we're kind of feeling forced to do it, but on the other hand, we see a lot of positive stuff for it. I think one of the other things we've been trying lately, which is super interesting, is adopting more of the creator content model, where we're doing a deal with a brand, and we're taking the long form version of it, and then those shorts, and we're putting paid behind the shorts, and then we're selling that whole package to a brand. So we're going, the cost of the paid ads out of our pocket is, say, $8 CPM. We're selling the whole package for a $30 CPM, and we're including the cost of that creator content in there. So it's a win for the show because we're getting extra reach for the show because of the paid, and then the brand, we can do the deal, and it's a whole different way we can sell it as well too. So we're starting to think about this a lot differently of how we package it and sell it, and as well as on the video front, as I was saying, it's not just talking heads, but how are we doing things differently with how we create those videos as well too.
Yeah, and I agree with you that each platform needs different formats. So how do you adjust with this? How workflow aspect? Do you record twice for audio and video, or put the video? No, you're okay.
So we pre-plan ahead, and this is also the way we create episodes. Before, when we were doing audio, we were only riding shotgun from whatever you guys talk. We'll edit it afterwards. With video, you cannot do that because everything is seen. You need to pre-produce it. You need to have segment producers. Hey, this is what I need you to talk to you about at this specific time frame only, for you to be able to generate the right clips. Because if you just, you can have 1 hour long, but if it's a bunch of a lot of banter that is not useless, it's not meant to go viral, then it's going to be very hard. It's a lot of real estate that's useless. So you need to pre-produce it. And sometimes what we even do is that, so let's just say they say A, B, C, D in terms of segments. But we felt like, you know what, D would have been better if we pre-cut it and put it up front. You front load it so that you get the maximum retention that you get rather than you put it. So we also engineer the episode. And you need to front load every time in video, because attention spans of people now with video, they don't have the same attention span that they give on audio. So you have to front load every single time.
I see James nodding. So you see the trend as well, and do you see this changing the way we structure our story for the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, so we had a speaker at this event last year from the ABC talking about a great show that they do called If You're Listening. And when you watch that show, you can watch it on YouTube or you can listen to it on a podcast, but it's two separate teams who re-edit it for the medium. And I think this is the thing, I'm going to be the grumpy person, I think, talking about video, because I think this is the thing that if we're not careful, video ruins the audio experience. If you upload a video to Spotify, it gets rid of your audio version. And the only audio that people can hear is the audio from the video feed. And so, I have stickers here, which I'm walking around with, that say that a podcast is something for your ears when your eyes are busy. That's what a podcast is. I stole it from Corey over here. Something for your ears when your eyes are busy. That's really what podcasts are. And if all of a sudden you are in the middle of a podcast saying, and look at this, isn't this funny? Well, you've destroyed what an audio podcast is. So I think that's one thing. I think video as well makes it harder to make money, not easier, because all of a sudden you've got to deal with all of the video. You've got to have many more people involved with the production. And I ended up, I interviewed the CEO of Goalhanger, who make a lot of really large UK podcasts. The rest is history, the rest is politics, and so on. They bring in a third of their money directly from the audience. Rather than doing it through advertising, they bring in a third of their money directly through the audience. And I think that is one of the big trends that I'm seeing, is that podcasters understand now that advertising is nice, but advertising is not the only way that you can make money. And actually, the better way of making money is having that direct connection with your audience. So make it as easy as you possibly can for your audience to give you money, whether that's time, talent, or treasure, whether that's money, whether that's actually helping promote your show, whether that's helping produce your show. You can do all of that. And I think there is definitely something in terms of that. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, in terms of video, YouTube does not care about podcasting. That's the fundamental. For YouTube, podcasting is this big. For those of you who are only listening to the audio, that's a very small amount, right? So YouTube really doesn't care too much about podcasting. What we need to be doing is making great shows that are something for your ears when your eyes are busy. That doesn't mean you can't have video, but it does mean that the audio should stand by itself, from my point of view.
So you're making a good point as well there, that you should build a direct connection with the audience to somehow support and also bring the revenue to your podcast. I want to go to Mbak Indah here. You did, you now at the Podcast Day Asia, you launched this research on Indonesia listening habit. Does it also include about how the audience or the community can do their part in supporting the podcast?
Okay, yeah. Basically for publics, we already launched 2 reports about podcasts. One is in 2023, and the latest one is in 2025, just last June. So basically our listener or our audience, as like you guys mentioning, they are like already switching from the audio to video. Among those who are like to hear the podcast through the audio, they now like combining both video and audio. While for those who are only like to hearing the audio only, it's kind of decreasing basically. Why? Because while they are consuming the video, like you are mentioning, mostly on the YouTube, they also want to have like entertainment, and also they want to see their favorite podcaster. So meaning that podcaster persona is also something that they want to see as well when they are consuming the podcast itself.
Okay, so the wanting to see who's behind the voice is also important. James, do you see the trend in Indonesia? There's decreasing number of audience only listening, only consuming audio podcasts only. So do you see the similar trend in the global world?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a trend in terms of content to be multi-platform, and and I think it's interesting that we're now hearing there's also a trend for content to be not just long form but also short form. Get as much from your content as you possibly can. It's whenever I'm talking to radio companies, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying get the most out of your content on whatever platform you can possibly do that. And I think that there's certainly a trend happening, in terms of that. I mean, I guess from the point of view of what is a podcast, it gets a bit more complicated if you're then saying that YouTube is a podcast and that a TikTok short is or whatever they have on TikTok, because I'm 50 and I don't know what TikTok is, but is one of those a podcast? And all of a sudden it then gets complicated if you're trying to report on the podcast industry. Well, what's that? And trying to get total statistics on how many people, for example, how much money did podcasting make? Well, do we include YouTube in that, or do we not include YouTube in that? So all of a sudden that gets very, very complicated, I think. And that's something, which I guess we just need to try and understand. I mean, one of the things about RSS, the foundation of why podcasting is so successful is actually that it wasn't built to make money. It was built to get podcasts out to as many different platforms as possible. And the more than 150 podcast apps in the world, they are making money in spite of RSS, not because of RSS. It really wasn't built for that. And you can see, therefore, that the closed platforms like YouTube, like TikTok, like up to a point Spotify, those are going to be, arguably better at making money. But it's a big risk. If Spotify stops open access tomorrow, then you're stuffed. And if YouTube all of a sudden thinks, actually, we're not going to monetize some of this stuff, then there are other people who are stuffed as well. So we just need to be aware, I think, of the control that we are giving to some of these large platforms if we're not careful by diving into closed environments such as that.
Okay, so because we are putting the content out there on other person's platform, they can have the rule any way they like. You mentioned about complication about do we include YouTube? Do we include TikTok as well? So I would like to go to Neil and Ron. What are the metrics that you are using now to measure the success? Is it more on the video podcast or on the audio, or how do you measure that?
One of the key metrics we look at is listen through or view through, I guess. That's a really important one for us to look at. How much is actually getting consumed versus a download, which we don't know if anyone's really listening to, actually, kind of a thing. So that's really important. So it's more like the size of the audience. So it's going into each one of those platforms. So going into Spotify, going into Apple, going into YouTube, and a couple of other platforms, and looking at real plays, real listens, plays, size of the audience. So listeners. And those platforms give you that, and stacking those on top of each other and looking at it that way, looking at subs across the board. So what are your subscriptions in Apple and so on and so on? Like looking at those numbers all together, stacked, and looking for trends, across the board. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. It's interesting though. On the other side, we still have to look at downloads because that's what we're selling if it's a monetized podcast. We work with a lot of podcasts that aren't monetized. So we work with a number of university podcasts. They're not monetized. They're wanting to know about the size of the audience and is this being consumed. If we're producing this content for them, they've got costs, and so they've got to tell their bosses this is money well spent. So for them, how much of this is being consumed is really those important, and the size of the audience is really important for them. The monetized shows we work with, we still have to look at downloads because that's the magical impression number.
Okay, how about you, Ron?
For us, it's similar metrics that are accepted across every platform. And what we're now selling are blended metrics. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what type of platform it is, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, shout out, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or YouTube, TikTok, and whatnot. The one thing that's always going to be present across the board are impressions. So what with this new strategy that we've been able to unlock, and now people want it, is we go blended. What does that mean? So there's certain metrics. At the top of the funnel is always impressions. Because each impression, all the way down to the thumbnail or the cover art, that already has branding on its own. So when you see that you deliver value from the long-form impressions, so I'll just give you an example. For every branded podcast that we create now, we call it a signature show. We measure the impressions that we're able to give out on Spotify and on YouTube. We add that in every week. On a good week, what we will have is possibly at least somewhere in the middle of 1 million to 2 million impressions. Great, we give value. Now on socials, since we post those same 7 clips, why 7? Because I want to make sure that every single day that exists after the episode drop, there is a clip. And we don't let the clip on its own. We boost that. We boost the clip ask for a whole all-in budget from a brand and say, hey, I need this budget because I need it for the talent fee of the podcaster. I need it for boosting and all everything else in between. From a brand's point of view, it's like, all right, I just spent X amount. Tell me what CPM you're going to get. Across the board, when we boost it, we're also able to generate 1 to 2 million per week on social impressions. You blend that in together, then you divide that into 1,000, that's your CPM. This is what's mind-dropping, mind-blowing in what we've been able to do. The CPMs we were getting on a week-to-week basis are cheaper than Facebook. That's $50 minimum. So now, from a marketer's point of view, whoever's cutting you the check, he's not going to get fired because he already got the content, he got the social reach, and the long-form retention metric that you get, plus all the branding in between. That's where we were able to unlock value. And a lot of these are now going second season, third season, like a normal podcast, but everybody gets paid. The podcaster gets paid a TF, whether they co-own the IP or not. But it's a formula that can work across the board. But you need both to thrive, socials and long form. And those the one metric that matters all of a sudden, aside from retention, obviously, are impressions and views. Very contrarian. You'll probably be like, what the hell are you talking about, Ron? But hey, it sells, so I'll take it because it's pretty lonely in the pigeonhole when you get into that 20% that will give you a pity check out there, and hard to thrive and survive there.
With that kind of strategy, how do you grow your direct listenership, like the audience who really care about the show?
There's
other
a
than the
cheat code.
numbers? Okay.
There's a cheat code. I'll tell you the cheat code. The host is 50% of the success of the show. And there's a minimum criteria over the type of hosts we get. It should be, and I got this from Spotify. I'm just carrying it over outside. So this is the same criteria they asked us to get creators before. It should be, regardless of what platform, the host should have at least 100,000 followers, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, doesn't matter. Why? Because it's a numbers game. You're trying to target 10% of that host's following to convert into a podcast listener. If you have 2 of that, you're talking about 20,000 immediate audience. You pair that with another blockbuster guest who will probably have 1 million, then it just becomes a numbers game. You unlock it through boosting. That's your audience. Then you capture it wherever you capture it. Socials, long form, put it everywhere. Rather than letting them funnel in, you chase them where they are. And that's the number.
Okay. Moving on to James now. We're talking about AI in the production. How do you see AI will change how the podcast is being produced or distributed or anything else as a futurologist?
As a futurologist, yes. I think, don't laugh, that's what I call myself. I think that AI is really interesting, and I think what AI used properly can do is free human beings up to be more creative, to do more exciting things, to get rid of the non-creative drudgery that we all have to do as part of our job of being creative. So I think it's very good for things like taking an interview, for example, doing a transcript of that interview and then coming up with the 5 points that you want to then put into your show description, for example. That's a really good use of AI. Where I think it gets a little bit more complicated is when you start looking at generative AI, so AI that makes stuff up. And I think you have to be more cautious on how you use that. Having said that, I mean, there is a company which I've reported on in the past called Caleroga Shark Media, which is based in the US. They are using AI to voice some of their shows and also to write some of the scripts for those shows, which a human being obviously checks afterwards. but it allows them to be very, very fast and very fleet of foot. So, for example, when the Pope was announced that he was ill, the former Pope, when it was announced that he was ill and unexpected to live for more than a couple of weeks, they very quickly produced a series called White Smoke, and that series was all about how the next Pope will be chosen. And they went through all of the information, got a nice AI clone voice to make it. The scripts were written by ChatGPT. It was deliberately built so that it would be there, ready and waiting for people to find if they were searching for that sort of thing. And I think that's very clever use of AI, as long as you're being open and honest with your audience in terms of how much you've actually used, in terms of AI. So I think that, there are definitely ways and means of using AI. I think we need to be open with our audiences where we can. What we should definitely not have is, to have a host of a podcast for 6 months and not tell anybody that person is actually AI, as if that would happen. So I think we just need to be careful of that.
Okay, so Neil has a background from the academia. How do you see that, the use of AI in everything, including in podcasts? Are we going to see like the presenter fully from AI delivering whatever it is on podcasts?
Well, that's pretty tricky. I think that I think for the academic podcasts we work with, I think it's more what James is saying. It's more using it as a tool to create what they're doing versus it actually being produced by the AI. And I think that the universities are being very cautious about that, and so I'm not seeing any of that happening. It could be, but I think from an academic perspective, I think they're being very cautious about how they wade into those waters.
Before moving to Mbak Indah, Ron has been producing podcasts with AI. Tell me about it.
Okay, it's our we have a small audio drama paywalled podcast play called Serie FM, and what we do is we technically we spliced up, say, a 1 hour long podcast, splice it up to 7 to 10 minutes a pop, and then made it episodic. After the first 7 episodes, which technically a whole episode in a long form anyway, you put a paywall, but we use Spotify as our storefront. Again, very dependent on their ability to still allow us to do this. I'm very much aware of the risk, but it works. We get routed after you go check out the podcast, you'll see a lock button there, and then it routes us back to our website where you can do a purchase, and then we send you a private RSS feed, which you can consume. And it's working because we're serving a type of podcasts, type of content that are underserved, namely BL and GL, or LGBTQ content. And we use AI to literally rewrite all these popular BL and GL novels on Wattpad, turn that into an audio drama script. Half of our cast are AI. These are typically the friends, the father, the dog, the cat. That is AI. And then the production time, which would have taken us probably a month to deliver one series, takes us a week. So again, and then at least there's no visual. But we're getting a lot of clamor. Like, hey, can you give us a visual of how that is? Like, no.
So
I don't
no
want to
more
go to hell
theater
yet.
of mine.
Okay.
So
not
no
even-
more.
Okay. But we'll animate that through AI only. But no humans will be involved. But yeah, it's such a cheat code in producing at scale and producing for cheap.
Okay, Maina, do you see the use of AI in the recent research on podcasts that you do this year?
Well, unfortunately for AI, we haven't covered it in our report, but based on our report, our customers or the user of podcast, they want to see some interaction between the podcaster and the guest because they prefer to have like one-on-one interviews. As you know, for Indonesians, we are we are prefer for something that more emotionally connected. That's why the content itself, they are prefer something that motivational education, which it already shifting from the 2023. While for 2023, the listener more to comedy and entertainment, but nowadays they want to something that more heavy because they want to something new, something they want to learn of from the podcaster, like you mentioned earlier, that podcaster or the host itself, it give a great impact itself. So that's why I think it's one of the something that we need to understand if we want to use AI, whether it will create impact if we use a real human with celebrity or with someone who have a great personality with the society and everything, because it will attract the listener itself.
Okay, so I want to give it to the audience. Do you have any questions? We have superstar panelists here. Any hands? Yes, thank you. Please tell us your name and your organization.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ethan. I'm from Noise. We are also a content distribution platform, mainly in podcasts. I have a two-part questions. So the first question is, with YouTube, TikTok leading video content distribution, and AI making it video very easy, many audio creators now use video clips to promote their content on those platforms. Do you think this strategy will continue to be effective, or could it harm the listener's experience? Because we've seen with our audience as well, there's a gap or like a false expectation being given. You see video, but the actual content is actually audio, which the video part is only promotional, right? I think that's the first question. The second question is related to the form of podcast, where traditionally it's being long form, but now short video is appearing, it's popular. Do you see a trend of more short form audio coming up? I've heard that Himalaya in China, they are big on short form audio. Do you see it becoming a global trend with the rise of TikTok, etc.?
Who do you want to answer your question?
Anyone from the panelists?
I'll take it first, Sam. So first question is video and how that would be. I think it's not zero sum. A lot of what worked in typical audio translates very well into long form video. Like how we edit right now. It's still like how we edit the audio podcast. I always say a measure of a good podcast is if I can listen to a video podcast even when my hours are, and I can still passively listen to it. The only difference is that there's a visual. The cheat-coded video, though, especially if, comes in two forms. Again, you don't. I always tell the team in PNA that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Get the great clips from that from that 1 hour long episode, but make sure there are 7 viral-worthy clips that are there. You need to see that. Then you cut it up. On cutting it up, that's where you up the ante, though. Because typically what we will do in an audiogram is this, what's the raw audio? You just split it, put some sound waves. That's how we used to do it the pandemic. Everybody did that. But in videogram, especially in a world of doom scrolling, your money shot happens in 3 seconds max. So you need to front load your hook. The hook comes either in the visual or as something controversial that's said, and then you have to up the ante. So, for example, somebody's doing a 1 hour a 1 minute conversation. You front load through B-rolls, like provide context of what they're talking about, and then always what you want to do, just so that you don't, because that can be the gateway piece that gets people hooked. Always include the link in the comments, so that when people want to discover, it's there. That's where I up the ante on I have a Reels team. So the way we designed our prod team is that they're long form guys and they're short form guys. The short form guys typically are really young who can edit in CapCut. They don't need a computer. The Gen Zs, and all that, they're designed to produce at scale. But that's also where the production value. There's even a strategy where on the same 1 minute clip, because I couldn't get something very hooky, I got a 15-second hook say, in the first half of the episode, and the rest of that episode came from quartile 3. Parsed it up, put some B-rolls in between. The numbers would speak for itself if it went viral or not. Of course, you got to give it a bit of push on the boosting, but if you know how to hyper-target an audience, then it becomes a flywheel.
Okay, I think the second one can go to James. Are we seeing more short forms then for podcasts?
I think we're certainly seeing more. So there are some shows, for example, in fact, one of the big shows in Australia is a show which is over an hour long, but what they also put in the RSS feed is little clips of individual parts of that show. So however you end up listening to it, you've got the choice when you open your podcast app. Do I want to listen to all 90 minutes, or do I want to listen to a couple of clips? So I think that is certainly going on. There's an awful lot of people that always ask me, as I'm sure that they do you, what's the ideal length of a podcast? And my answer to that is always the ideal length is as long as it needs to be, but not a second longer. So edit as much stuff out as you possibly can, because that's super useful. What we do know from your research is that the average daily audio listening duration is between 1 and 2 hours. And given that we know that, we can then actually go, well, if you're making a show which is 2.5 hours long, that's probably too long, because we can see from the data that people don't listen that long to audio in a typical day. So I think that's a useful thing as well.
Okay. Anyone else from the audience would like to ask question? No one? Yes, you feel like wanting? No. Okay, so I think we're coming to wrapping up this session. Maybe some closing statements from you, and how, from your point of view, from content creators, from futurologists, from academics' point of view, and research, how do you see or predict the future of podcasting? Starting from you.
Okay, now the podcast audience is become more segmented. They are young listener, they are young millennials, they are older millennials. Each of them requesting a different content and different objective when they are want to access the podcast. So I think as the looking at the consumer point of view, the content itself should be more variative, because currently from our data, like I said before, like millennials tend to want to access heavier information, more to the political news and also motivational, while for the Gen Z or the young listener, they doesn't want to hear about that. They want to hear comedy, entertainment, and in more shorter podcasts compared to the millennials. So I think from the industry perspective, you also have need a different strategy in tapping on those different target audience, different objective and different persona.
Okay, moving to Neil.
Yeah, I think from a university academic perspective, we've been working for about 5 years with Stanford, and I think where I've seen the relationship go is 5 years ago it was this thing we did over here, and now it's a key and core channel. So for a number of the schools we work with, it's as important as their email list, it's as important as their website, and it's as important as their social media channels. It's a direct voice, especially in America right now, where academia and higher education is under attack, and there's a lot of rhetoric. It's an opportunity to go direct from campus, and here's the truth. Here is really what's happening. And in academia, they're recognizing that, and they're seeing as this is our opportunity to break through the rhetoric and to control our own voice. I think that goes back to the RSS feed. And I think that's really important about it. And so I think the future for academia is it's a key channel, and it's going to be, and it's going to continue to be.
Okay, moving to Ron first, then closing with James.
For me, I think the immediate future and the reality that we live in now is podcasting and video is all blurred. And if you are still releasing content in audio and you're releasing to video, you need to elevate the look because the audience has also shifted on their behavior. And if you want to unlock the audience that you've always coveted, you have to adapt to how they consume content now. From doom scrolling through long form, you need to be able to be the one to adapt, right? It's at the core of this, it's the same stuff that if you've been here since the olden days where it's all audio, don't lose that. It's not zero sum. But you have to adapt the distribution, and the bigger TAM or the total addressable market exists with video. That's where you need to really diversify and really adapt to.
Yes, James.
And I guess I would say there is a real good place for audio content that works while you are doing other things, while you are driving on the highway, while you are washing the dishes, whatever it is that you are actually doing, there's a real benefit in audio. Audio is cheap, audio is easy to put together, audio is good to edit, to polish. It's much easier to do that than it is with video as well. I would disagree slightly with Ron in terms of I do believe that from the point of view of the real power, the real strength that we have as podcasters, that strength is audio. That strength is reaching people in, using voices in people's ears. 92% of people listen to podcasts through headphones. That's a tremendously powerful thing. So I think the future is really exciting. I think the future for audio is really exciting. May not be an easily monetizable future, and maybe that's part of the changes that we've seen over the last couple of years. But I think in terms of audio is a tremendously exciting place to be.
Okay, thank you very much. So this wraps up our session because the duration of the session is as long as it needs to be, not 1 second later. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you on the next room
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
final session. Thank you.
And please do go into the final session, which you'll find in the big room opposite. The final session is the last session of Radio Days Asia. It'll include little recaps of some of the things that you have missed from only being in this room. So we'll see you over there. Thank you so much.